Greetings fellow Mist Wanderers, my name is Steve Morgan and this is DM of the Mists, covering all things Krezk and Ravenloft. I have done a video in the past where it's kind of like a campaign diary for people who've watched my other videos and probably want to learn more specifics about my game that aren't covered in the main sort of videos that I do. I did a video where it's about 30-40 minutes where I talk about sort of 4 years worth of weekly D&D sessions in the space of a video, and when there's enough for a small video I wanted to do a part 2, a part 3, etc. Just because sometimes this video might cover gaps that aren't in my other videos. For example, I did a big video about Valachan and went pretty in depth there, but between Valachan and Forlorn they jumped into a few other domains and revisited old domains as well, where I can't really justify a video for that. So it makes sense to kind of have those in here. So the story so far video covered Lost Mine of Phandelver, Curse of Strahd, and Ravenloft domain hopping campaign up to they were just arriving into Valachan. Then the high level is they did Valachan, they went back to Barovia and the Carnival, and then they moved on to Forlorn. So this video is mostly going to cover the Barovia and Forlorn stuff. Oh, but they also did very, very quick visits to Markovia and Falkovnia as well, which I'll mention. And even for the videos where there's a dedicated video for it, I'll still give a high level overview of what happened here. But if you then want to see the more in-depth, detailed version, I'll sort of usher you to those videos. So I ended the first part of the campaign diary saying they were just entering Valachan. I think that was back in February or March. And they finished that about a month, or a few weeks ago, a month ago. So we were in Valachan for a few months out of game. And like I said, that's an hour and 20 odd minute video where I go really in depth on the adventures they had when they first arrived, the Trial of Hearts, how they got drafted into it and how it went, and then figuring out how to defeat Chikuna and escape the domain, essentially. So if you want to watch that, you can do that separately. I'll see if I can do a thing where on YouTube, I think like a link appears up here, or a little like icon, and then that can guide you there, or feel free to look for it in my channel separately. We ended Valachan with they had a ship full of Valachan refugees. They had to evacuate the people of the villages of Shurun and Asalo, because as part of the ritual to defeat Chikuna, Rudolf van Richten sacrificed himself in order to destroy the entire domain. So bought enough time for everyone else to escape and evacuate. And in addition to those folks, they also had, it sounds so weird just saying this if you don't know, haven't seen this in my other videos, but for those of you who know Curse of Strahd, there's Rictavio, also, you know, Van Richten's disguise, has a tiger that hunts Vistani. In my game changed to, it did hunt Vistani initially, but it got retrained to hunt the undead. Proved to be very useful in the domain of Falkovnia with all the zombies. And they found and rescued her family in Valachan. So in addition to all the people of Valachan, they also had a couple of extra saber-toothed tigers, one who was intelligent and can talk, and the rest were basically wild animals. They arrived at Barovia with all these refugees. They left the tigers on the ship though. And they meet Father Lucian from Vallaki. He was one of the survivors of Curse of Strahd. In my game, the Baron and Lady Watcher both died. But the Baroness, she's still alive, but one of the NPC allies of the players at this point was Victor Valakovich. And Father Lucian, who's Victor's uncle, says, your mother, my sister, had a heart attack recently. She's survived and she's doing okay, and that gave me a nice opportunity to have Victor leave the party for a while, because we had an extra player join us, and it was becoming difficult to balance having quite a few players and a few NPC allies. So now they only had like one NPC ally who would stick with them constantly. I think maybe two actually, who was Jennifer weathermay-foxgrove and Erasmus van Richten, Rudolf van Richten's teenage son as a ghost. But otherwise, it would have had 3. And Victor has things like Fireball and Cone and Cold as well, so he's smart enough to know how and when to use them, so it was making some of the battles too easy. So I took him out for balancing purposes, really. Upon arriving into Barovia, into Vallaki, they saw posters to the Carnival, which told them that the Carnival had just arrived in Barovia. It was their first time visiting there. In the past, they'd seen it Wandering the Mists, which is when they first saw it. Then they saw it in Mordant and Falkovnia, and now in Barovia. They gave the Valachan refugees to Vallaki, essentially. Father Lucian took them into the church and said, we've got some empty houses here you folks can move into. So that was good. And also, Jennifer weathermay-foxgrove asked the keepers of the Fire Blue Water Inn to pass the word, send word to other people, such as Alan Nick Ray, Jennifer's sister, Laurie weathermay-foxgrove, let them know that Van Richten had died. They didn't need to do it for Esmeralda because they were going to see Esmeralda shortly because she's still in Barovia. They went to the Carnival, and on a previous visit to the Carnival, they found out that Tyndall the Barker wasn't the real Tyndall. The real Tyndall was called Tindufalus, and he was trapped in a mirror. They helped Tindufalus escape the mirror, and Tyndall the Barker, the sort of charismatic version of Tyndall, got sucked back in the mirror. But Tindufalus is a really shy man and not really a Barker. So when they got to the Carnival, he was trying to do Tyndall's old intro, but botched it. And they were told about some changes to the Litwick market stores. There's now a new general store, because the previous version turned out to be run by a monster who wanted to kill Isolde, the Carnival's leader. There's a prosthetic store, which was handy because one of my PCs lost an arm in Valachan and needed a replacement. And somebody selling common magic items as well, just for flavour and for fun. The player who needed an arm went to the prosthetic store and got that done. There's also a magic tattooist at the Carnival I put in the Litwick market, and the new player who just joined us wanted a magic tattoo. And then they wanted to see a show at the big top, and I said that as they approached the big top, they heard people screaming and people running out of the tent. And a witness said, there's some little evil gnome creatures are attacking Isolde. And is Redcaps from, I can't remember if it's Volo's Guide off the top of my head, it's definitely in Mordenkainen Presents Monsters of the Multiverse. And they go inside the tent and see about 10 of them surrounding Isolde, ready to kill her. And the PCs helped to take them out. They captured one to interrogate him, but Isolde lost her cool with it and killed it. One of my players went to try and stop her, but wasn't quick enough. And this is the first time my players heard about the Caller. So she explains about it's the lore from Van Richten's Guide about her, about how she was a knight in the Feywild. Her fellow knights were killed by the Caller. There's the involvement of, I want to say, I can't remember the name. Hang on. The involvement of Zybilna, who is actually, spoiler alert, Tasha in disguise, makes Isolde forget about her, but remember the Caller. And there's a whole thing where she starts a carnival in the Feywild. She meets another carnival and the owners swap places, which means that Mr. Witch and Mr. Light of the Witchlight Carnival used to run the Ravenloft Carnival, and Isolde used to run the Witchlight Carnival, but they swap places, which is really cool. I talk more about this in my Carnival video. But they hear about the Caller. I had Jennifer weathermay-foxgrove say, Van Richten's notes said that the Caller was just a myth, and Isolde got angry. He was like, it's not a myth, he's real. And I haven't decided yet if it is going to be, somebody they bump into, or it's just a myth that's designed to drive Isolde into this sort of vengeful rage, and is kind of just extra revenge and chaos brought on by Zybilna. They also meet a Loxodon wizard. So Loxodon are the elephant people, and this Loxodon wizard tells them about Haslan, which is one of the places they want to go to. They learned about Haslan from, I had it that Vilnius from the Amber Temple in Barovia and Curse of Strahd, him and his master were from Darkon originally, but then went to Haslan, so it was a great way to introduce two other domains. And they hated Vilnius' guts. They just thought he was a horrible jerk, a coward, selfish. I loved role-playing him, I'm not going to lie. And this Loxodon has oily, furry skin, so I kind of said it was kind of more mammoth stock, wears glasses over its eyes, has dentures, and it's actually Vilnius, and they don't know it. And it was hilarious. They were complaining about Vilnius to Loxodon's face, and the Loxodon was like, ha ha ha, like, you guys are insulting me. But it rolled a high enough deception that they were none the wiser. And basically the story is, after leaving the Amber Temple, Vilnius went back, grabbed a bunch of dark gifts, including the reincarnation one, went back to Haslan to confront Haslik, and Haslik killed him, but then he reincarnated into a Loxodon, but still had all of the sort of flaws from the various dark gifts he had from the Amber Temple, and that's where he is now. And he's playing the long game. He knows that the players, he's met them before, are going to be confident enough to do it, so he's going to wait until they want to go to Haslan. He'll be their guide, and together they will probably defeat Haslik, and then he'll turn on them at the end. That's what my players don't do this, and ruin the surprise of themselves. And they decided to come back to the carnival the next day with one of the PCs has an adopted daughter, and they played some carnival games. Now, when I did carnival games in the past, I didn't feel like it went very well. This time I took 3 from Witchlight, from that book, and I found one on DM's Guild. I'll put a link in the description. I used one from there, which I think was one of those things where you got to hit the bell with a hammer. And the prizes were various trinkets from Van Richten's Guide, Curse of Strahd, and I tweaked a few from Witchlight. I think one of them is like a toy unicorn. I changed it to a toy nightmare because I just felt that was more fitting, more Ravenlofty. And this adopted daughter, the players suspect that she's from Forlorn, which is why they're going to Forlorn next. Because she's got red hair and she came from outside of, she was originally found in Falkovnia, and then they took her to their base in Barovia. Because she has red hair, Ez speculated that she's from Forlorn, known for its red-headed witches or druids. This was somebody on the Ravenloft subreddit gave me this advice, so kudos to them. Gave me this idea, I should say. And she saw a druidic woman in the Carnival, which I think was Celeste the Snake, and she accidentally calls her Mummy, which caused a lot of confusion, and she says, oh, where's Mummy and Other Daddy and Nanny Shia? And they end up being characters in Forlorn who, when I do my Forlorn video, I'll go into that in more detail. And then the other side of their return to Barovia, so that as well as seeing the Carnival, was to go back to Barovia and go back to their base, which is Fidatov Manor just outside Krezk. Esmeralda's there sort of as the guard and the caretaker when they're not around, and they broke the news to her that Van Richten had died, which obviously brought a lot of tears. And they decided to hold a wake for Van Richten the next day. And it was great, again, to drop some more lore. I think something like I looked on the Mystopedia and the Fraternity of Shadows wiki and managed to drop a few more domains such as Har Akir and Lemordia and talk about the various monsters and ghosts and things that you fought in those different places. When they were in Vallaki, my players were huge. Probably their favourite NPC was Blinsky in Curse of Strahd. And then I had it that when they went back to Blinsky's for the first time since the domains opened up, and Blinsky had previously said that he had aspirations to open more shops around other places. They go in and there's a younger, slimmer, less enthusiastic individual wearing a jester's outfit, and it turns out it's Milivoj. Milivoj has got a second job in addition to digging graves as a member of staff at Blinsky's, but he hates it, obviously. And I did a story on Reddit, I'll link to it in the description and you can read more about that there. I also did this thing where they have Bjorn Horstman, who's the scientist from Falkovnia, as an ally. So after they finished Falkovnia, he travelled with them to Barovia, and I played it as well. I'm not going into too much detail here, I cover a little more detail in the Falkovnia video, but he was kind of more good or neutral than evil, as the original lore dictates, for reasons I won't get into now. But he had ideas to create a device that when they use they've got the Luba's Tarokka of Souls, which is a magic item from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, where it's very powerful, but sometimes one of its features can release a monster somewhere that's really strong. And he created a device where if they release it on purpose, the monster will be trapped. So it's almost like a mini, I suppose like a Mordenkainen's Magnificent Mansion kind of thing, where it's just like this mini demi-plane. They release the monster, and instead of appearing somewhere within 100 miles away, causing chaos, it appears right next to them and they can attack it. And they released 3 right there. So they released a Flame Skull, a Bone Claw, and a Deathlock White. I amended the original list. I talk about that more in my Luba's Tarokka of Souls video, where I talk more about how it's an awesome item to add to your Ravenloft campaign. And I was absolutely gutted, because the next one they would have drawn would have been a Death Knight. And it would have been a Death Knight with advantage on everything, on its attacks, on its saving throws. It would have been horrific. I was genuinely worried about a TPK. And then they decided, no, let's just do 3. Let's not do 4. Let's not overdo it. And I was like, no! But hey, we'll do that in the future. And it might not be in the device. It might be just somewhere random where this Death Knight appears and causes chaos. That could be quite interesting. So they've now released, there's 14 cards with monsters. Well, 15 if you count the one that appears at the end. But there's 14 cards with monsters, and they've defeated 9 of them. So now they're using it, and there's a very low chance of accidentally drawing one of the cards that still has a monster in it. They left Barovia and returned to Markovia. This was their 3rd time going to Markovia. One of my next videos is going to be Markovia. So they visited Markovia 3 times for different reasons. And this 3rd time they were going was to take Rictavio's tiger to Valachan so that they could gain sapience like it had gained sapience. And so they can all be a happy, talking, intelligent saber-toothed tiger family. And it will be its own video coming soon, but essentially the high-level version is that the more Dr. Fran, who's Dr. František Markovia, but he's called Dr. Fran by the animals, the more he does the experiments, the more he becomes a monster and an animal himself, and then he goes wild and starts attacking. They knock him out, and when they're looking for a cure for his condition, they find information about how he became the Dark Lord, essentially, and it's because he used to do experiments on his wife, and he killed his wife. And then they've got this moral quandary of, do we want to help this man? We help him, and it saves it saves him, but also they're worried about the animals losing sapience, that kind of thing. But if they don't help him, then there's potential other issues. So they decided to help him and restored him back to his normal self. And then they've got plans to bring the surviving mongrel folk from Krezk in Barovia to be there, because they're kind of bestial people anyway. And they, because of the whole thing with, I think Markovia was originally beast people before they changed it in 5th edition, and the Abbey of St. Markovia I think is a nod to the original Markovia, and that's why there's mongrel folk there, because it's kind of like the broken ones I think they're called from Markovia. Anyway, I'll talk more about that when I do the Markovia video. But they also want to take the Valachan refugees there, so there's a few ruined villages, and it's probably closer climate to Valachan is Markovia compared to, say, Barovia, and they've got a new home and they can help. They're all capable people who've dealt with many wild animals, having lived in a deadly jungle. So if things go wrong and the animals lose sapience, or Dr. Fran goes wild again, they can help. They also quickly visited Falkovnia, which they previously liberated. They previously defeated Ladeska, the Dark Lord, and previously that means it stopped the zombie sieges that were happening every month. It's because they found in Valachan one of the... So I had a PC from Falkovnia, and he found one of his NPC allies trapped in Valachan, and they rescued him, and then they were basically dropping him off home. But they also were, while they were there, they wanted to inquire about Gondogol, because they've got their sights set on the Shadowlands, and they don't know how to get to the Shadowlands, but they found out from somebody that Gondogol knows, because Gondogol, I think in his backstory, the two sort of main domains he frequents are Falkovnia and the Shadowlands. And in 5th edition, Gondogol's gender swapped to a woman, but I like the older lore that he's an older man. I thought that worked pretty well with Ladeska being like a younger woman. And I had it that the two of them knew each other from before she became a Dark Lord and from her mercenary days in the past. Anyway, he's not around, but they said they'd keep an eye out for him and ask him to stay. And it was at that point they decided to go to Forlorn. And about a session or two ago, they arrived into Forlorn, started to see some goblins, have found a small hideout of druids where there's only like 30 or 40 survivors compared to thousands of goblins, and are slowly learning more about the lay of the land and have been given a few quests. And that will be its own video. And what I'll probably do is part 3 of these will probably be after they've done Falkovnia. And if they do a few more things, like if they go to the Carnival again, or Falkovnia or Barovia, I'll talk about those so I can talk more about stuff that may not appear in other videos. And that's it for that one. Really not much more to say, I guess. It's, like I said, these videos I feel aren't as... I worry that they're not as useful and helpful as some of my other videos, but I suppose if somebody's interested more in the sort of in-between elements of my campaign, or if they're thinking, right, okay, if people return to Barovia or the Carnival, what can I do? Or if you're thinking of running the Carnival and, you know, I covered more additional stuff for the Carnival, I have been thinking about doing a Carnival Part 2 video that kind of covers, like, you know, talks more about the games I said and things like that. But this is also a nice place to talk about those things. So we'll leave it there. So the next one, as I said, will probably be cover Forlorn very briefly, and then adventures after Forlorn, which are likely to be Hazlan, the Shadowlands. Can't remember if they got their sights on anywhere else. But then eventually they will go to Darkon and they will fight Azalin Rex, who's going to be the BBEG of my campaign. Thank you, Mr. Wanderers.